welcome. I serve as Executive Director for the California Association for the Gifted.
My name is Krista Landgraf, and I serve as President-elect for the California Association for the Gifted. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to use the Q&A located at the bottom of the screen, and please use the chat box to interact throughout the session.
And of course, we are encouraging you to become a member. It's essential that you become members to support events like these for not only California, but those of you who are here from across the nation and internationally. Go to www.seeagifted.org and click on membership to become a member today.
The session will last from 2 o'clock to 2:45 p.m. The next session will begin at 3 p.m. using the same link, so you don't have to go anywhere. We look forward to seeing you at our next conference, which will be our annual conference on February 23rd through the 25th, 2024. I can't believe it's 24 already.
I have the distinct honor of introducing Rian Reed. Rian Reed is a national board certified teacher with 12 years of teaching experience, including leading the school-wide enrichment program and AVID. She is a featured author of EduMatch 2018, writing on recruitment and retention practices for educators of color. She has also presented at Harvard University on culturally responsive instructional practices in reading and math. Rian Reed continues to impact equitable decision-making as the vice chair of the Education Advisory Committee for the City of Laurel, appointed by Mayor Craig Moe. Rian Reed is currently a cohort member of the Equity-Centered Pipeline Initiative at George Washington University in partnership with the DC Public Schools and the Wallace Foundation. Thank you so much for being here, Rian Reed, and I look forward to having you guide us in your presentation.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and talk with you about designing equitable gifted programs through partnerships. So you already got to hear a little bit about me, so I'll switch through that. Our agenda for today, we're going to talk about our why. Then we're going to talk about different frameworks for designing for equity. I'm going to give an overview of my school, the benefits of the partnerships that we were able to create, and then I'm going to show you a whole bunch of pictures and images of our program in action so you can get some ideas to take home with you to your school community. During the presentation, I want you to think about how you would go about your designing your equitable gifted program by identifying a few takeaways from the presentation, what partnerships in your own community would help you build your program, and also think deeply about your schedule and if that allows for a student voice. So our why is really about access and representation. Overall, there's only 40% of schools do not have any kind of gifted program at all. When there is a gifted program, only 9% of Black students are represented. And when we're talking about English language learners, that number is even lower at 2%. So I believe that one of the solutions is the school-wide enrichment model from Joe Renzulli, and he has the concept of giftedness, where it talks about the relationship between above average ability, creativity, task commitment, and all those three combine to create gifted behaviors. It also is very important to note, like, the history does not remember a person who merely scored well on an IQ test. And I really think that's important because we can create experiences where all students can have gifted experiences. So this is the process that I went through in order to design the gifted program at my school. We first talked about defining what the problem is by considering, is it feasible to implement this program? What are the attitudes around the program? What outcomes would we like to see? And we did that through, one, conducting empathy interviews, Then we also went through and did like a quick win thing from the school retool. So that was like doing live polls around the building. So me and other staff members would just ask students and parents questions about how they feel about the school environment. I'm also going to take some time and show you some specific examples of this after I go through this step. So then we went to plan. So how will you plan? I use the equity by design framework, a lot of research from Transcend. We use BELE framework and CASTLE. Then we actually, decided who was going to be involved and what we were going to do. We implemented it. We looked at the results from the student videos that created. Our students wrote Dear Me letters. We also used Renzulli Learning Platform. There's interest inventory surveys that we use. And then we took some time to analyze the data for next steps, where we realized that we need to make sure that there's more peer-to-peer empathy interviews so the students can be involved in the process, and then also skills training. So I'm going to show you more about the empathy interview. So this is the process that we took. So we had to design what our goal was. It took about 2 to 3 hours to conduct this and plan, and the interviews were 30 to 45 minutes. So empathy interview questions are definitely open-ended, and they allow for storytelling. So when you're conducting an empathy interview, you don't want to have like leading questions where you know what the person is going to say at the end. You allow them to ask questions that are open-ended so they can tell a story about their experiences. So for example, these are the questions that I asked the students, like, what are the challenges that keep you from coming to school? How do you prepare for your night before? Approximately, like, what time do you wake up to prepare for school? And then we also ask questions about, like, what does trust look like for you? And what does trust look like from adults at our school? Then we also ask questions to staff members. Tell me about a time when your role was an asset to supporting a student attendance. Tell me about a time when, you didn't feel like it was an asset. And then we also had time to talk with our parents to say, like, what are your hopes and dreams for your student in 10 years? And what is your relationship like with the teachers and the admin at the school? You can record information from your empathy interviews using a tool like StoryCorps app, or you can just record it by hand. This is for audio, visual. Then I said that students recorded videos. So hopefully my sound is available so you can see this video that a student made.
My career choice when I grow up is to be a police officer. So, because the reason I want to be a police officer is because I want to protect people and do good deeds and be like a hero and be somebody that people look up to be. And some people can even exceed my heroes.
All right, so we took some time to analyze the student videos, the empathy interviews, in order to then use these mindsets to help us with our understanding. So the equity by design framework talks about designing at the margin. So that's making sure that the student voice is very clear and from diverse groups. Also, it includes starting with yourself. So something that's different from me and my students is I am a teacher. So there's a different power dynamic that I have with my students than because of our titles. and roles. So I needed to make sure that I let go of my power as my role as a teacher to make sure their voice was involved. And that's what it's called, comes with this succeeding the power that you have. Making the invisible visible is also about acknowledging that there are different power structures that go along in our society. And then speaking the future to design the future is really about getting away from deficit mindsets and adding more positive thinking into the conversation. Then we have an additional framework where we talked about the interconnectedness from teaching and learning, our school-wide systems, the family and caregivers and communities, and district policies. We also use the CASTLE framework. This was also essential for understanding the needs of our school and designing our program. And again, it talks about the interconnectedness from the different stakeholders, as well as looked at self-awareness, self-management, their social awareness, their ability to be responsible in decision-making, and relationship building skills. So overall, our school is 94% Black, 5% Hispanic, 3% are English language learners, 84% of our community is at risk, and 20% of our community receives special education services. And when it comes to making sure that we're building equitable programs, it's important to note that 100% of our students were able to participate in interest groups, as well as, we had 29% that were enrolled in the STEM courses themselves. So at the bottom, you can see that our budget was $0. So partnerships were very essential in making sure that we had an equitable program. And I know that personally, I am amazed about what we were able to accomplish with their $0 through partnerships. So I hope that you can gain some ideas about how you can build your program out with little to no money. So right here is the results from the interest inventory that was given from Renzulli Learning. We noticed that 0 students mentioned that they were interested in STEM, and we determined that it was because of exposure. So we needed to make sure that we were allowing our students to experience more STEAM and STEM experiences. So we ended up with a problem of practice, which was students need a way to explore their sense of belonging through their gifts and talents and build the skills necessary so that they can empower to design the life that they want and be hopeful for their future, while also being in control of the present, because they're not always celebrated for the positive that they bring to the world. And the big ideas that came from this was their ability to have a strong future orientation, understanding that what they're doing presently is connected to their future goals, and then that they belong in the space that they're in. So partnerships allowed us to have flexible scheduling. We added a school garden. We had weekly guest speakers, field trips, and also an educator wellness program. And we believe that educator wellness program was essential to our larger program for gifted, because our teachers also need that love and support, so they continue the work. So what our flexible scheduling looked like, we had Monday town halls as well as interest groups. Our internal partners that we had were the instructional superintendent. We had to get special permission to have flexible Monday schedules where there was early release from the typical instructional system schedule that we would have. And then we had a strong partnership with the teachers as well, because many of the teachers, as well as the culture team, had to support the daily systems. Our external partners were Empower Ed, which is a teacher advocacy group through Empower Ed, we were able to meet with council members weekly to talk about why we needed a flexible schedule at our school. We also spoke at education board meetings in the city to advocate for flexible scheduling. And that partnership allowed us to eventually get funding for flexible scheduling for the following year. So our program was really took 2 years to build out. Then we connected with families. Families and the community were really essential to building out our flexible schedule and the experience that we were able to give to our students, because they knew who in the community had the skills that we didn't have in the building to bring into our space. We also had an organization called Youth Access. They were very essential as well in getting speakers and advocating for our flexible schedule. Hustlers Guild was another external partner that came in. And then we had the Credible Messengers, which was an organization that prevented crime from happening, and they were essential in our schedule. So on the left-hand side, you can see what our schedule looked like that went on a rotation every Monday, starting at about 1 o'clock. We would go through this rotation where the 8th graders and 6th and 7th graders would come into the auditorium. We would have small groups, and I will show you an example of what our system looked like to make sure that would happen weekly. And then again, teacher voice was essential. Some of the barriers that came up was just the capacity to do this work was very overwhelming. Sometimes even for me, I had a teaching schedule, plus I was doing all this work. So many times I would be tired, but that's why the collaboration was essential. So I will open up this rolling document so you can see. So every week we would email this rolling agenda to the staff, and they could see the previous experiences. We would tell the staff like what the task was, what everyone's role was for the day. You can see on the first time we did this, we did vision boards. We also had different guest speakers come in that talked about self-love and pride for yourself, enforcing what our climate and culture expectations were, such as the dress code. Although personally, I don't like dress codes, but that's what our school had. So, that's what we did. Preparing for a peace walk. Gun violence was an issue in our community. So we partnered with an organization called 202 Walk for Peace. And the students, before that walk, we just talked about our safety, our psychological safety of living in a community where gun violence was frequent. Let's go back to the presentation. We also added a school garden and hydroponic system. Again, we had a $0 budget, but because of partnerships, this was possible. So our principal was definitely an integral partner, internal partner that made this happen by making the connection to the University of District of Columbia. And they were able to help with the maintenance of the garden on a frequent basis. We also had the Mission Continues, which is a veteran-run organization, and they were actually like the physical manpower that came in and built the garden on the side of our school. As we also had a hydroponic system that was inside the building. We were able to have this hydroponic system on 2 different floors. We had 3 floors in our building. So the second floor had a hydroponic system, which is right near my classroom. And then we had one in the special education classroom on the 3rd floor. The Mission Continues was also essential in our partnership for just like ideating and designing our program. So you can see here, there was a time where we went to a meeting and we talked about our vision and our why for our school. Then some systems that we had, like planning meetings and check-ins with the University of District of Columbia to make sure that they were consistently supporting us and sharing feedback when there were different issues. So like, over long breaks, who is going to maintain the hydroponic system without, killing the plants that we had? And then we had the SEM course and flexible Monday schedule in order to ensure that the students were engaged in the garden and the hydroponic system every Monday. We had weekly guest speakers. The teachers and feeder high schools were also a central part in this partnership because we had the high school staff, like the counseling staff, come and speak to our students at time. Again, you'll see that the Hustlers Guild was very essential. So right here, this is the founder. She actually used to work for President Obama, and then she founded this organization to come back and help our community. So the students were very inspired to just meet someone who was progressing and make a positive impact in the world. We had champion groups in this picture where they were reflecting on their individual attendance data and discussing opportunities to celebrate their success. We had BJ Page come and talk about the egg, the carrot, and the coffee bean, and how we need to learn to be more like the coffee bean instead of the others. And then also we talked about Georgetown University law students came and talked to our students about anti-bullying. And there's a picture of that right here. And this is my classroom too. Howard University was also a central partner in this story. They sent counselors to speak to our students. We worked with Your Neighborhood Clinic. They also sent speakers and people to run the champion groups. We had other organizations like Black Swan, and then community members were also essential in making sure that we had additional speakers every week for our students. We had field trips as well. Here we went to NYU and met with current NYU students. We had celebration events thanks to Hustlers Guild again. We went to Sky Zone. We went to the Air and Space Museum. So I really, this student, 8th grader, is standing here looking at the bus. And I prompted him to look at the bus because that was, with around future orientation, they have the high school options on the side of our buses in DC. So it was a way to incorporate, travel and going to the trip, and then what he sees for himself in the future. And then here we have the students exploring and documenting their career interests. We also had a robust educator wellness program. So this was in partnership with Your Neighborhood Clinic. They won a grant from OSSI. So we had 3 educators from our school attend monthly and quarterly meetings for training on what is a whole school approach to improving staff stress and retention. And this is an image of one of our trainings that we had. We did a lot of affirmation and gratitude work with the staff. So you can see some images here of letters that were sent to me. We had students do the same around whole child anti-racist school systems. So they wrote their own becoming statement on what they want to become. In this video, it's a video on my Twitter account. There's a student singing to a staff member and delivering supplies, because we know that sometimes we don't have all the supplies we need, and that causes stress for the educators. We had a lot of different social events that were paid for by the neighborhood clinic right here and right here. We also created passion projects. And in those passion projects, the partners were really youth access. Youth access came in to serve as judges or listen to our students' presentations, the families sending in supplies to make it possible. And then internally, the teachers were running the sessions. So we had one group that was studying entrepreneurship. Another group was using art through healing. This was the art through healing project really came from the fact that we lost a student to gun violence. So the students were processing their experiences through art. We also learned about, financial literacy and budgeting. And then another group did a project about becoming a lawyer, and they named their project How to Get Away with Murder. And then this right here is another financial literacy and home ownership project. So as I mentioned before, this work is difficult. So right now, what I want you to do is take 3 minutes to write your own affirmation about how you're going to center yourself in your work. The one that I wrote here on the screen is, I am filled with the skills and experiences I need to bring my authentic self to building equitable programs. When it feels like I don't, my community is always there to help us thrive. And also, it is revolutionary to rest along the journey. So I'm going to just wait, and you can drop in the chat some affirmations that you will use for this work. I can no longer remain in a step back position. That's powerful. I will give myself grace as I move forward with our gifted program incorporating the skills that I learned today. I'm here to serve my students, and it's my responsibility to make sure their academics and SEL needs are met. I will allow myself to look inward for strength and authenticity, to embark on building my community while focusing on daily wins and seeing failures as opportunities for learning. These are all very powerful. I'm so glad this is giving you hope. It's okay to be a lone voice on a mission for what's best and necessary for our gifted students. Soon others will join your voice and we'll have a choir of support for what is best and needed for our gifted students. These are also inspiring me as well. All right. So this is the question portion of the presentation. I believe that I saw one question previously that talked about buy-in from teachers. And the honest answer was that this was not really sustainable over a long period of time, because everybody was not bought in. And it wasn't that the fact that they didn't care about the work or didn't believe in the work. It is simply like the capacity of the people. And that's why it was important to add on the educator wellness part, to make sure that we as people also had the space to heal and work through the system, because we were also experiencing the death of our student from gun violence. You know, we were also walking by yellow tape of a murder that happened right next to our school. So we were experiencing these things along with our students. And sometimes we needed to step back so we can heal as well. So it wasn't that, you know, we didn't always care. It just means that we needed to step back so we ensure that we were also having a strong mental health as we did the work at the same time. Are there any other questions?
We do have some more questions in the chat, in the Q&A pod, which I will go ahead and help you facilitate. And this is actually a question from an earlier session that I'd like you to expand on. This person is asking, can somebody clarify for me why I have students that are identified as gifted, yet their reading, writing, and comprehension is below grade level?
Yeah, sometimes kids with disabilities are also gifted at the same time. So as you can see, when we gave the Renzulli Learning Survey, there was multiple categories that the students had interest in. So when someone is gifted, it doesn't mean they don't have a deficit in another area or space.
I agree with you. And I think that our society has this misperception of multi-potentiality of gifted students, when in fact, multi-potentiality is very rare. It's very rare to have a gifted student who is excelling in all academic areas. I remember I had a gifted student who was a savant mathematically. He could solve math problems without even writing anything. In fact, he often used a series of dots to solve the math problem. And he could solve math problems faster than I could type them into my calculator. He was exceptional mathematically. However, the student needed additional support in reading, writing, and language arts because the student was also multilingual. And so we often feel that gifted students should have multi-potentiality when in fact they do need additional academic support. Another question from one of our audience members is, do you have any other effective program designs that you've seen implemented or that you've seen in the curriculum in your area?
I would say no. Sometimes if you go into like our attendance portal, you will see a chair or some kind of notation saying that a student might be gifted, but I have not seen it implemented anywhere. So for example, at my school, we are in Ward 8 in DC. So that is the poorest area in Washington, D.C. And there is no gifted program other than the one that I helped implement. And unfortunately, because of funding, we actually do not even have the program anymore at all. And I am now at another school. So no, I do not have another example, unfortunately. So
No
that goes
problem.
back to the presentation before about the barriers that we have. They're very real.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I think it's so significant that you shared an example of service implementation without funding. Because in California, we don't have policy, we don't have mandates. And often one of the questions that we get from administrators and teachers is, oh my gosh, I don't have funding. How am I going to support this? So I think that that's really instrumental, especially from the place that you shared it, in that this doesn't necessarily have to be a district level initiative. This can be a school site initiative that is started by a teacher leader. And I really want to emphasize that, folks. This is a teacher leader who has done this from the grassroots with no budget. It can be done. Another person has asked the question, would you share the human resources at your site and district which enable this wonderful program design to be put together?
So the human resources that we had, I tried to mention them next to what we did. So our families, an organization called Youth Access was definitely a human resource that we had. We had Your Neighborhood Clinic was active in giving us funding and on the ground support for implementation of the program. We had an organization called City Bridge. They gave a lot of funding as well as the training and thinking about how to build out our program. So when I was talking about equity, designing for equity, when I was talking about, CASTLE and all those frameworks, that came from the training from City Bridge. And I personally had to apply for that fellowship. So as it was mentioned before, it was an individual teacher that was helping bringing this about, and that anybody can, do some research in your community and see what fellowships are available at local universities or nonprofit organizations to help build this out. They paid for the field trips. They paid for this online program where the kids could record themselves. That I also applied for Donors Choose to get some devices for my students. We use public transportation. So definitely the city itself, indirectly, they didn't know they were helping us, but they did. We also had Howard University, Georgetown University, other nonprofit organizations like the Hustlers Guild, another organization called Black Swan. We also had the Mission Continues, and the University of District of Columbia again was essential. And for getting like the district policy and the city policy together, Empower Ed was the essential group where we could go and advocate for the flexible scheduling model that we needed. And well as our principal had to advocate, actually on the first day that we were supposed to do the flexible scheduling model, the SOUP called and said that we couldn't do it, but they were able to negotiate, saying, hey, no, it's already getting action. We can't do that. So it's going to take collaboration and pushback within your system at times to make sure you get your students what you need.
One of our board members is actually pointing out in the chat, so essentially we simply need to open our eyes and see resource opportunities around us. Another individual would like to know, what's the time frame you experience from planning to implementation?
It's 2 years. So in the first year, most of our work was done with City Bridge, where we went through a pilot plan. And we had to, again, on the first slide, I was talking about define process and what that looked like. So we collected our data, quantitative data. We had, what is the problem you are trying to solve? And this took a year to do. And that included the empathy interviews. It also included looking at the student work product, as well as the student surveys from the Renzulli portal. And that happened in year one. And then the second half of my presentation, where I talked about the examples of the flexible scheduling, the school garden, that happened in year two. The building of the garden happened during the summer before year two. Something, honestly, that was missing was still time. So I believe that if we had more time, if I wasn't teaching and doing this, I would have had more time to engage with my peers to make sure that they were bought in a little bit more. But we were trying our best with what we had. Any other questions?
Yes, hey, sometimes that's all we can do, right? Another person is asking, is there a platform, social media, for example, where educators can connect, share ideas, programs they find are successful at their school sites? Well, I would put a plug in for the California Association for the Gifted social media. You're more than welcome to follow us at CA Gifted on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook and share some of those ideas. I would also like to encourage you to follow Rian Reed on social media. Rian Reed is very active on social media in terms of sharing these ideas as a teacher leader. And you can follow the work that she has contributed to the field in this arena. Rian Reed, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, I just want to add, when you go to my social media, there's also videos of this in action. I have a lot of pictures on the side, but there are a lot of videos, so you can see like how the students were engaging in the content and also their ability to share ideas and thoughts. One project that I actually didn't mention earlier, which was really cool, is one of our students was into fashion, and she designed the outfit that she wore in public. So, that is really powerful to me, that an 8th grader was designing her own clothes and sharing her fashion skills with the world. So you can connect with me at Miss Reed on Twitter/X, whatever you like to call it. And then my email is ryan@ryanreed.com. You can also connect with me at LinkedIn. And I just want to say thank you for all that you do for our children, and continue to keep those affirmations that you wrote close to your heart, because this work is not easy and we need each other to make sure that we're designing equitable programs. I would love to hear from you, and thanks.
Thank you so much. Our next session will begin at the top of the hour at 3 o'clock. Same link, same place, so you can stay seated. And we look forward to having you with us as we close out the day with our last session.